We got a new recruit to talk about today. Felipe Quinones is the player. This guy has been going off at the FIBA U17 event. He had a 42-point, 3 rebound, 3 assist game when Puerto Rico upset France to advance to the quarterfinals of this event. And he plays at IMG Academy. He's a guard. He's just a bucket getter, man. Like, if 42 points didn't tell you enough, go watch the tape of this. Like, he's just an all-around three-level type scorer. The shot looks pretty. He gets to the rim with ease. He looks a lot bigger than your standard guard as well. They list him at 6'4", but you watch the tape, this man looks more like a 6'6" wing to me. He holds offers from schools like Baylor, Memphis, Cal, and then most recently he has picked up offers from Purdue and Matt Painter, and from Michigan, and from Dusty May, which is why we're talking about him today. I would love to see Felipe Quinones in the Big Ten. I would love to see him at my school, Riley. So give us some film study here. What do you see in Felipe Quinones?
Yeah, first I got to shout out that you hinted at the upset of France. We're coming off the NBA draft. Was what 2 weeks ago where we saw like three Frenchmen go in the lottery. The French are riding high right now, and Lester, I almost called him Lester Quinones. Felipe Quinones just packed up your under 17 team with a 40 burger. I like his game a lot. I know you sent me. I mean, before I even watched the film, I read Jamie Shaw's breakdown of his game at on three. And Jamie's someone who I know back from he when he wrote for Heat Check for one summer, and he made a lot of bold predictions that turned out to be right that year. So he's someone whose eye for talent I tend to agree with, and he noted on three has him as a top 40 kid. And yeah, you got right to it with saying he's a 6'6" bucket getter. He's not especially explosive or fast even, but he's just crafty, knows how to like use his length to score. In some ways, just watching that game against France where he had the 42 points, it reminded me a little bit of Marcus Domask as far as
Ooh.
a 6'6" guy who can handle and pass a little bit. And I know Domask had that post game that he showed off a lot this past year at Illinois. And I don't think, at least from what I've seen so far, Quinones has that, but it could be something he develops. But it's just sort of that herky jerky movements that he uses to sort of get guys on his hip and create an advantage. And then at the rim, he's just really good at using his length to finish over guys, even if he's not the most athletic.
Yeah, so he's 6'5". That's the updated listing I saw. I think he's got to be at least like 6'7.5" with hair though, because he does have a nice head of hair and it's got to be worth a couple inches. You mentioned on three has him higher, and whenever on three has somebody like kind of outlier rated higher than the rest of the industry, on three does a really good job of promoting that they have their a player higher. They're willing to stand on business, you could say. Jamie Shaw is a big part of that. And I think you're right. Historically, like when on three is the outlier, that's usually been correct, and the other services end up looking pretty stupid. On three has Quinones ranked number 34 in the 2026 class. He's 56th according to 24/7. He's 73rd according to Rivals, and ESPN has started catching up. They have him up to 36th. So I think it's only a matter of time before he ends up in the 30s as a consensus, and I
Mm-hmm.
could see him landing as like a very, very high 4-star player. I won't be stunned if over the next year he either grows a little more or has enough big performances that he ends up being like a mid to low ranked 5-star. I think his game's that good. The player comp that I see, I'm very curious what you'll think of this. It's another like not crazy athlete, not gonna wow you with any of the speed athleticism stuff, but just like an all-around bucket getter that could score at all three levels. I think Quinones is Jalen Wilson with a way better jump shot.
That feels a little bit lofty just because
It's
Jalen Wilson
lofty.
was an All American. Is he in the league now? I know. Did he ever?
He
He's
he
probably playing
did
in summer league.
he did make the league. I don't know that he played much this past year, but he's been on a roster. So here's where I'm coming from on the Jalen Wilson thing. I get it. Lofty goal to be a national champion and an All-American and blah, blah, blah. With that said, I think Jalen Wilson had 2 seasons at Kansas where he was just like good starter. And then he did the Kansas wing thing where in year 4, he rocketed up from 11 points a game to 20. I don't know that Quinones is ever going to score 20 a game in college. I don't know how he projects in the NBA, but Wilson was like a kind of mid-range recruit. He was just a solid 4-star recruit. He wasn't a 5-star. Michigan was on him for a while with John Beilein. He actually committed to Michigan before Beilein left for the Cavs. And then he reopened his recruitment, ends up at Kansas. And then he plays the long game because Kansas had Ochai Agbaji and a bunch of other guys who were going to play over him for a while. He was just really good. He was really well-rounded, really solid. Jalen Wilson was 6'8". I think Quinones obviously needs to grow a little more. But again, I watch his film. It looks like he's 6'8". The big difference is Jalen Wilson's jumper was not anywhere near what Quinones' jumper is now. Like Jalen Wilson shot 33% from three his final year's best season at Kansas. I think Quinones could do that today, but it's that what I see is like how he scores with ease despite not it looking easy. Like nothing about Jalen Wilson's game felt like, oh, he's ahead of everybody, but he just
Mm-hmm.
found ways to get it done. That's Quinones to a T to me.
You're selling me on it. So in my mind, Jalen Wilson was like 6'8", 6'9". To answer our question, is he in the league? He's currently with the Nets. I think he was on a two-way this past year, played some for the Long Island Nets. The Nets have him listed at 6'6". So
Yeah,
shout out
there
to
you go.
Shout out to Kansas for lying. But maybe wherever Quinones ends up, just list him at 6'8". No one will know the difference.
Yeah, that's apparently there's your lesson. Go to Kansas and they'll list you as 6'11". There you go. This is definitely a player to keep an eye on. Last couple tidbits for me, I have to ask. Michigan and Purdue are on the list. What are your thoughts of what Quinones could look like in either of those systems? Obviously, we don't know what Dusty May's offense looks like at Michigan yet. He's recruiting a lot of bigs, so that could be weird, but we know what Purdue's offense looks like. Is Quinones a good fit for Matt Painter?
I need to reset and see what Purdue really remember what Purdue is like when it's not just the Zach Edey post touch or Braden Smith pick and roll on every possession. It's
Good
like a
point.
lot easier to picture this dude just getting buckets for Michigan. Uh, I don't know. There's no other way to quantify it than watching him play. It sort of reminds me he looks like a Michigan wing. Whether that was
Hey.
under Beeline, whether that was under Jawan Howard. Uh, Again, let's go with good Jawan Howard that first 2 years. Um, but they like he's not the defender that Franz is, probably never will be. But I just think of like those long, lanky wings who can just get you a bucket in a variety of ways. When I look back at the Juwan Howard era and even some of Beeline before that.
Yeah, there was
What
a
do you?
time when the words Michigan wing meant something, Riley. I got tears streaming down my eyes. Yeah, no, I think you're right. Like I still view my program obviously as a good landing spot for guys like that. And I think Dusty's gonna work. It's a different system, but yeah, the weird thing for me in year one, he's going like tripling down on the big men. He's never done that at Florida Atlantic. He's never tried to play two bigs, and I am a little scared he's trying, but I think that's kind of just his two best players that he got are two centers, and he's going to make it work. But I think long term, you see him pivot back to what he did at FAU, which is play a bunch of guards, let him have a lot of freedom, let him make plays. And if that is the system, Quinones would obviously be fantastic in that system. I could see him being really good at Purdue too. You're right. We got to see like a reminder of what it is post Edey. But I think my big thing as a rival fan through the years is like Painter will completely mold his team to whoever his best personnel are. Like we saw him do that with Carson Edwards. We've obviously seen him do it with a bunch of post players. I think this year we're going to see Braden Smith featured, unlike any point guard at Purdue that Painter has had. Quinones, I don't know if he deserves it. Like if he shows up and he's the best player on the team, maybe you'll get featured like Jaden Ivey did at the end of his freshman season. Maybe not.
That's a
You
good
never know.
point.
But also like he feels like a Baylor guard too. They're just sitting on his list super ominously. I don't like it.
Yeah, I just think of Baylor they usually get like the shorter dudes or the more athletic dudes. Like Baylor just finds
True.
every short king who's a killer. Scott Drew must be working with like a different recruiting database, and if not, they're super bouncy. That's where I like. That's where I don't know. I just see it more happening with Michigan, and even like John L. Davis wasn't really a point guard, but had some point guard skills, more of a point wing. And again, if you're Dusty, you probably sell him on that comparison.
Honestly, you're right. Is Felipe too boring to be a Baylor guard?
I kind of think so. He's a
That's
bucket, but he is a little boring.
the boring bucket. I mean, hey, then we might have a new nickname for him. All right, go watch this player. He's a really fun player to watch some tape of. You'll be hearing a lot more from him in the coming years.